Maggie blinked up at the tall stranger standing in her doorway. His sharp gray eyes locked onto hers and rain dripped from his expensive coat, pooling onto the worn-out welcome mat. Something about the way he spoke, calm, deliberate, sent a shiver down her spine. "I'm sorry, what?" she stammered, gripping the doorframe. The man studied her for a long moment before sliding an envelope onto a rickety table. "I don't believe in charity," he said, his voice low, "but I do believe in paying debts. And whether you realize it or not, I owe you." Maggie stared at the envelope, then back at him. Who was this man? And why did it feel like her life was about to change forever? Rain streaked down the grimy windows of Haven Street Diner, a modest little place tucked between a pawn shop and a laundromat in downtown Chicago. Inside, the air smelled of sizzling bacon and burnt coffee, a comforting hum of chatter filling the space. Maggie Harper wiped her hands on her faded apron, her chestnut hair slipping from its messy bun. After a 12-hour shift at 28, Maggie had become the kind of woman who wore exhaustion like a badge of honor. Despite the endless grind of waitressing, her hazel eyes still sparkled with warmth. She barely made enough to cover rent in her cramped apartment 3 blocks away. But what little she earned in tips, she often gave away. $1 here for the old man shivering on the corner, a free coffee there for the single mom who came in after night shifts. It was just who she was. Maggie had grown up poor, raised by a grandmother who taught her that kindness was the one currency that never ran out. She lived by that motto, even when it meant skipping her own meals or walking home in the rain because she'd given her last bus fare to someone else. Tonight, though, the diner was quieter than usual. The clock ticked toward 9 p.m., and only a few stragglers remained. A trucker nursing a beer and a college kid hunched over a laptop. Maggie was wiping down the counter when something caught her eye. Outside, through the rain-spattered glass, she saw a small figure huddled near the diner's entrance. A boy, no older than 8, sat in a wheelchair, his thin frame wrapped in a threadbare jacket. His dark hair was plastered to his forehead as he stared at the ground, his hands fidgeting with a frayed blanket draped over his legs. Maggie's heart clenched. Without a second thought, she grabbed a clean towel from behind the counter and hurried outside, the cold rain stinging her skin. "Hey, sweetie," she said softly, crouching beside him. "What are you doing out here all alone?" The boy looked up, his wide blue eyes shimmering with uncertainty. I'm waiting for someone," he mumbled, his voice barely audible over the patter of rain. Maggie frowned, glancing around the empty street. No sign of a parent or guardian. "You can't stay out here in this mess," she said gently. "Come inside with me, okay? It's warm and I've got something special for you." The boy hesitated, then nodded shyly. Maggie wheeled him into the diner, settling him at a booth near the radiator. "I'm Maggie," she said with a grin, draping the towel over his shoulders. "What's your name?" "Tommy," he replied, a small smile tugging at his lips as he warmed up. "Tommy, huh? That's a strong name. How about some food? You like grilled cheese?" Without waiting for an answer, she headed to the kitchen. Minutes later, she returned with a steaming plate of golden grilled cheese sandwiches and a mug of tomato soup, her go-to comfort meal. "This one's on me," she said, tucking a napkin into his lap. "Eat up, kiddo." Tommy's eyes lit up as he took a bite, the cheese stretching in gooey strings. "This is the best thing I've ever had," he said, grinning. Maggie laughed, sitting across from him, chatting about silly things, favorite colors, superheroes, anything to keep that smile on his face. For a moment, the world outside the diner faded away. What Maggie didn't know was that someone was watching across the street. A sleek black Bentley idled in the shadows, its tinted windows reflecting the neon glow of the diner sign. Inside, Victor Grayson sat in silence, his sharp gray eyes fixed on the scene unfolding through the glass. At 45, Victor was a titan of industry, the CEO of Grayson Technologies, a multi-billion-dollar empire built on cutting-edge software and ruthless ambition. His tailored suit and silver cufflinks marked him as a man who belonged in boardrooms, not this gritty corner of Chicago. But tonight, he wasn't here for business. He was here for Tommy. Victor had parked the car a block away, intending to grab his son after a quick call with his overseas investors. Tommy's nurse had quit unexpectedly that morning, leaving Victor scrambling to juggle fatherhood and his empire. He told Tommy to wait by the diner while he sorted out the mess, but he hadn't expected this. Through the rain, he watched as Maggie wheeled Tommy inside, saw her kneel beside him, and witnessed the way his son's face lit up as she fed him. Victor's chest tightened. A rare feeling stirred within him, something unfamiliar and almost unsettling. A flicker of emotion broke through Victor's steely exterior. He pulled out his phone and dialed. "Clara, get down to Haven Street Diner now. No suit, no heels, just jeans and a hoodie. I need you here in 20 minutes. Clara, ever efficient, didn't question him. "On my way, sir." Victor leaned back, his mind racing. He had spent years building walls around his company, his heart, and his son. Tommy's condition, a rare neuromuscular disorder, had turned Victor into a man obsessed with control. He hired the best doctors, the best caregivers, but no amount of money could buy the warmth he saw in that diner window. Who was this woman, and why did she care? Half an hour later, Clara slipped into the diner, her blonde hair tucked under a faded cap. She spotted Tommy instantly, still chatting with Maggie, who was now pouring him a glass of milk. Clara approached the booth, forcing a casual smile. "Hey, Tommy, time to go, bud. Your ride's waiting." Tommy pouted, clutching his half-eaten sandwich. "Can I finish first?" Maggie glanced at Clara, her instincts kicking in. "You know him?" she asked, her tone gentle but protective. Clara nodded quickly. "Yeah, I'm, his aunt. Just picking him up for his dad." Maggie studied her for a moment, then smiled. "All right, sweetie. You take care, okay? Come back anytime." She handed Tommy a napkin and a cookie from the counter for the road. Tommy beamed. "Thanks, Maggie. You're the best." Clara wheeled him out, her heart pounding as they crossed the street to the Bentley. Victor stepped out, his imposing figure softened slightly as he knelt beside his son. "Hey, champ, did you have fun in there?" Tommy nodded eagerly. "Maggie's so nice, Dad. She gave me food for free and said it's because kindness doesn't cost anything. She didn't even ask for money." Victor's throat tightened. Free. In a world where everything had a price, this woman had given his son something priceless. He ruffled Tommy's hair, masking the storm of emotions brewing inside him. "Get in the car, kiddo. I'll be right there." As Clara buckled Tommy in, Victor lingered, glancing back at the diner. Maggie was back at the counter, wiping it down like nothing had happened. He climbed into the driver's seat and turned to Clara. "Find out everything about her. Name, address, background, everything. I want to know by tomorrow." Back at his penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan, Victor couldn't sleep. The city lights glittered below, but his mind was stuck on Haven Street. Tommy's words echoed in his head. She gave me food for free. Victor had seen kindness before, calculated performative acts from people who knew who he was, who wanted something from him. But this was different. Maggie hadn't known Tommy was his son. She hadn't known anyone was watching, and yet she had acted like it was the most natural thing in the world. By morning, Clara delivered a slim folder to his desk. Margaret Harper, 28, lives in a one-bedroom on West Taylor Street. No family, no college degree. Been at Haven Street Diner for 5 years, barely scraping by. Rarely able to pay rent. "That's all I could dig up," Clara said. Victor flipped through the pages, his jaw tightening. An ordinary life, stretched thin by circumstance. And yet, she gave what little she had. He closed the folder and stood. "I'm going to see her." Clara blinked. "Sir, you mean now?" He grabbed his coat. "Yes, now." Maggie trudged home that night, her sneakers soaked from the rain. Her shift had been brutal. Spilled coffee, a rude customer, and a measly $12 in tips, half of which she'd slipped to the homeless guy outside the diner. She fumbled with her keys and opened her apartment door, the creak of the hinges revealing a dim, sparsely furnished space. She was about to collapse onto her lumpy couch when a knock startled her. Peering through the peephole, she saw a tall man in a dark coat, his face shadowed but undeniably striking. Her stomach flipped. Nobody knocked on her door at this hour. Cautiously, she opened the door a crack. "Can I help you? Margaret Harper?" His voice was low, commanding. Yeah. Who are you?" "Victor Grayson." He paused, letting the name hang in the air. When her puzzled expression didn't change, he added, "I need to talk to you." "May I come in?" Maggie hesitated, then stepped aside. Her curiosity outweighed her weariness. Victor stepped into the tiny living room, his presence overwhelming the space. He glanced around. No TV, a single chair, a stack of library books on the table. "You live simply," he said almost to himself. "Yeah, well, I get by," Maggie replied, crossing her arms. "What's this about?" Victor turned to her, his gaze piercing. "Yesterday, you helped a boy in a wheelchair. Fed him, kept him warm. That boy was my son, Tommy. I was parking the car when you took him in." Maggie's eyes widened. "Tommy's your kid?" "Oh, he was just sitting there, and I couldn't leave him out in the rain. Is he okay?" "He's fine," Victor said, his tone softening. "Better than fine. Thanks to you. He told me what you did, how you didn't charge him, how you treated him like he mattered. I've been thinking about that all night." Maggie shrugged, flustered. "It was nothing, just a sandwich." "It wasn't nothing to me," Victor countered. He reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope, sliding it across the table toward her. "I want you to work for me. Grayson Technologies. A real job. 6 figures. Benefits, the works." Maggie stared at the envelope, then back at him, her mouth falling open. "You're kidding, right? I'm a waitress. I don't know anything about tech or whatever you do." "I don't need you to know tech," Victor said firmly. "I need someone with a heart like yours. Someone who does the right thing when no one's looking." "That's rarer than you think." She shook her head, backing away. "This is crazy. Why me?" "Because you saw my son, not my money, not my name," Victor said, his voice cracking slightly. "Do you know how few people do that? I've got a company full of sharks, Maggie. I need someone I can trust." Maggie's hands trembled as she opened the envelope. Inside was a contract, her name typed in bold. She looked up at him, tears pricking at her eyes. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Victor replied, his tone firm but hopeful. "But there's one condition. Never stop being kind. No matter what." Maggie nodded, wiping away the tear that had slipped down her cheek. "Yes." But her journey was just beginning. Her first day at Grayson Technologies was a whirlwind. Glass offices, endless meetings, and whispers about the waitress Victor had hired out of nowhere. Some saw her as a charity case. Others suspected there was an ulterior motive behind her hiring. But Maggie focused on what she had to do. Then a month in, the twist came. Clara approached her desk one afternoon, her face pale. "Maggie, we've got a problem. Someone's leaking company secrets. Sensitive stuff. Victor's furious, and he thinks it might be you." Maggie's heart sank. "Me? I don't even understand half this stuff. Why would he?" "He doesn't want to believe it," Clara said, lowering her voice. "But someone saw you talking to a guy from a rival firm at the diner last week. It's suspicious timing." Maggie remembered a regular from Haven Street had stopped by, asking about her new job. She thought nothing of it at the time. Now it could cost her everything. Victor called her into his office that evening. His expression was unreadable. "Maggie, I took a chance on you. Tell me I wasn't wrong. I swear, Victor, I'd never betray you or Tommy," she said, her voice shaking. "I don't know who's doing this, but it's not me." Victor studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "I believe you, but we've got to find the real leak. Help me." Together, they dug through records and traced the leak. It led them to a senior executive who was jealous of Maggie's rise and had framed her to protect his own shady dealings. With evidence in hand, Victor fired him on the spot. His trust in Maggie was cemented. Years later, Maggie stood at Tommy's high school graduation, now a VP at Grayson Technologies. Victor, gray but proud, sat beside her. Tommy, grinning from his wheelchair, was on stage. The diner days were a distant memory, but Maggie never forgot her promise. She launched a foundation in Tommy's name, feeding kids across Chicago, proving that kindness could build an empire of its own.